Here are 3 ways to tell that the deal that President Biden just cut to save the American economy is actually a great deal. I know there are things that none of us are going to like about this, but stick with me and let's talk about why this is a heck of a lot better deal than it might seem at first. I think you all know what we're talking about here. For 6 months, Republicans have kept us in a hostage crisis. Since 1960, Congress has agreed 78 separate times to pay our bills. But this time, Republicans said they wouldn't agree to pay America's bills that were racked up under both Republicans and Democrats over the course of decades, and a quarter of which came under President Trump, unless they got a whole bunch of conditions. Here's one of America's leading economists explaining on our podcast, Beyond Politics, exactly what would happen to America if Republicans got their way and we didn't pay our national bill.
Stock prices are going to come down, crash. We're all going to be worth a lot less. And of course, then government can't pay its bills. So people who rely on that cash aren't going to be able to spend, and the economy is going to go deeply into recession very quickly. Recession meaning layoffs, lots of layoffs. People are going to lose jobs, and unemployment is going to rise very quickly. We're going to be down a deep, dark hole economically within a few weeks.
Now, Speaker Kevin McCarthy and President Joe Biden have announced a deal. Here are those 3 reasons why the closer you look at it, the better it looks like President Biden did. 1, we got the hostage out safely. What Republicans were talking about was hurting millions of innocent bystanders. That's us I'm talking about. But railing about it doesn't solve the problem. The major thing we care about is just getting them out safely. Because of this deal, tens of millions more Americans are going to have jobs, and hundreds of millions of us are going to have much more in savings. If you care about people's well-being, getting this deal done is the most important thing you could do, especially for poor people, working people, middle-class people, everyone. 2, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. Joe Biden did not have a strong hand here. The last time we went through this, it was between President Barack Obama and congressional Republicans. Obama had a significant polling advantage when it came to who the public would blame if we defaulted. If there was no deal, voters would blame Republicans for the economic catastrophe. This time, polling was dead even. And Democrats have a lot more to lose from a pure politics standpoint. President Biden has had an incredibly strong economic record. 12.7 million jobs created, the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, the most manufacturing jobs created in 30 years. Simply put, President Biden has had one of the most legislatively and economically successful 2 years in American history. Many Republicans were surely thinking that their best political option would be for the economy to crash. Once voter memories get fuzzy a year from now about who did what to whom that led to a global recession, they'd be a lot more apt to just blame the person in charge, the incumbent president. I'm not saying that Biden should have agreed to anything, but Biden could have given up a lot here and still have been a lot better off politically, which makes point number 3 even more remarkable. The compromises he ended up making are not that bad. Republicans wanted to cut $130 billion in education, housing, health. Instead, those kinds of programs are getting a 1% increase next year. Republicans wanted to put in more work requirements for Medicaid and for food assistance. That would have ended health coverage for millions of Americans. What they got was an increase in the requirements that already exist. That goes up from age 49 to age 54. That change only lasts until 2030, and it exempts homeless people and veterans. And there's no change for Medicaid at all. Republicans wanted to end President Biden's plan to cancel up to $20,000 of student debt. What Republicans got was, well, nothing. The deal just put into law what President Biden was already planning to do, which was resume student payments and interest accrual by September. So basically the deal just says, yep, what you said you were going to do that. Republicans wanted to get rid of the entire $80 billion that Democrats had passed to help the IRS improve customer service and go after wealthy tax cheats. What they got was a $1.4 billion cut. If you don't believe me that Republicans feel like they might have gotten taken here, just look at how the right wing is losing its mind about this deal. Republican Congressman Ralph Norman said that Kevin McCarthy has just sold us out. Republican Congressman Dan Bishop fumed about rhinos congratulating McCarthy for getting almost Zippo. And the best quote may have come from Republican Congressman Ken Buck. Ronald Reagan said, if you got 75% or 80% of what you were asking for, I say you take it and fight for the rest later. Speaker McCarthy's version, if you can get 5 or 6% of what you were asking for, you take the deal and claim victory. Look, I wouldn't say that Republicans only got 5 or 6% of what they wanted, but If Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden had sat privately in a room and McCarthy had said, Joe, here are the talking points I need to be able to put into a press release to give me cover. You've got to give me just enough to be able to say those. This is pretty much the deal you'd end up with. I definitely understand that some Democrats will be frustrated here. But if you look at the big picture, the pain that we've spared tens of millions of Americans, the much better political outcome that we got while playing a much weaker hand, and the relatively small list of concessions that Democrats had to make compared to what right-wing Republicans were demanding, this is about as good a deal as we could have hoped for.